Hey friends, how's it going? In this video, I'm going to recap from 2016 titled The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to wish everyone happy and great day. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. The movie opens in a regular suburban house in Grantham, Virginia, where the police have arrived to investigate a horrific crime scene. We notice multiple dead bodies around the house, with blood splattered across the walls. However, the most disturbing part comes when they discover the lifeless body of a naked woman in the basement, half buried and without any visible injuries. Since they couldn't identify her, and she has no connection to anyone in the house, the sheriff decides to call her Jane Doe for now. To add, nothing has been stolen in the house, there's no sign of a break-in either, and it appears the family was actually trying to escape the house before their deaths. The scene then cuts to a morgue, where we meet a coroner named Tommy, and his son Austin, performing an autopsy on a severely burnt body while recording everything. Tommy then teaches his son how to identify the cause of death, and states that every dead body has a secret, and some just hide it better than others. Afterward, Austin finishes up the work, and is about to leave when he's startled by someone, who turns out to be his girlfriend Emma. She's come to pick him up for their movie date, but her curiosity is piqued by the place, and she wants to explore. The morgue has a vintage and haunting atmosphere, so Austin explains that it has been in his family for 3 generations. Emma reaches the room with corpses, and wants to see one, but Austin refuses because his father is extremely strict. Just then, Tommy appears, and grants permission only if Emma is truly serious. Austin thus pulls out a dead body, and we notice a small bell tied around one of its ankles. Tommy explains that in the past, it was difficult to tell whether a body was truly dead or simply in a coma, so they had to use this method. Even though there are advanced techniques now, Tommy is a bit of a traditionalist and likes to follow the custom. Afterward, the couple decides to leave for their date, but as they reach the elevator, they notice the sheriff arriving with a dead body. Austin wants to help his dad in case he needs him, but Tommy tells him to go ahead and have fun. Regardless, Austin can't shake the uneasy feeling, because he knows the sheriff wouldn't be here this late if it wasn't important. He apologizes to his girlfriend and asks her to come back at 11 p.m. so they can watch the midnight show. Emma is obviously enraged, but she eventually understands his situation and leaves. Meanwhile, we see that the sheriff has brought Jane Doe's body, which has no identification or fingerprints. At this moment, Tommy's pet cat begins hissing out of nowhere, but the old man sends him away. The sheriff shares his theory of what happened in that house, though it's just based on a hunch. He found 4 people dead in there, and has no idea how to connect them. He thus asks Tommy to find out what happened to this woman by morning, since he has to answer the press tomorrow. After the sheriff leaves, the father and son begin the autopsy process. The old man starts recording the entire procedure, and mentions that they'll perform it in 4 stages: an external evaluation, a heart and lung evaluation, an evaluation of the digestive system, and finally, an evaluation of the brain. During this, they hear on the radio that the weather will be beautiful and clear for the next few days. Next, Austin states that the subject appears to be in her mid to late 20s, and her skin looks completely intact, without any signs of bruises or markings. They open her completely gray eyes, and Tommy points out that this doesn't happen unless the body has been dead for days, which is impossible since she looks fresh. Also, her wrists and ankles are completely fractured, yet there are no outward signs of it. They further find traces of an organic material called peat in her nails and hair, which is only found in the north. When they open her mouth, they are horrified to see her tongue brutally severed. Tommy soon notices that she's also missing a tooth, and moments later, he pulls out a strange thread from deep inside her mouth. When he examines Jane's private area, he's stunned to discover multiple deliberate cuts there. Next, they proceed with the internal examination, during which the lights suddenly begin to flicker. The radio then emits a strange sound, mixed with the scream of a woman, before an old song called "Open Up Your Heart and Let Sunshine In" begins to play. Tommy then proceeds to cut her body, and an enormous amount of blood gushes out, which is unusual. They also notice that her waist is unnaturally small, and Tommy states that this happens when someone wears a corset for a long period of time. Austin finds it bizarre, and points out that such dresses went out of fashion a couple of 100 years ago. Tommy then cracks her rib cage open, and is shocked to see that her lungs are completely blackened. He claims that even if someone smoked 10 packs of cigarettes a day for 30 years, their lungs wouldn't be this damaged. This kind of destruction only happens from 3rd-degree burns, but that doesn't seem to be the case, as her body is completely intact. Up next, Tommy examines her heart and other organs, which appear cut and severely damaged. With this much internal damage, her exterior should be completely mangled and disfigured beyond recognition. The 2 men are left utterly confused, while a huge thunderstorm erupts outside, and the lights flicker again. At this moment, a sudden noise from outside catches their attention. so Austin steps out to investigate. He sees nothing unusual at first, until he notices a strange woman's figure, which soon disappears. The scared guy decides to find her. While inside, Tommy accidentally cuts his hand on Jane's bones during the dissection. Elsewhere, Austin hears noises coming from the ventilation. And then, when he opens the grate, at this moment, his dad also arrives, and when Austin checks the vent again, he's horrified to see his cat writhing in pain. He retrieves the animal, and notices it is bloodied and badly injured. This deeply distresses Tommy, so he decides to end the poor creature's suffering and snaps its neck. Tommy then proceeds to incinerate his beloved pet, and asks his son to leave him alone for a moment. Not long after, Tommy returns to the autopsy room to resume their work, and they move on to stage 3. Austin realizes his dad is upset and tries to get him to open up, but Tommy reassures him that he's fine. Later, while cutting into one of the tissues, Tommy finds a flower inside, shocking them both. He pulls out a book and discovers that the flower is called Jimson weed, a powerful paralyzing agent. This explains the inflammation in her organs, and it turns out that the flower only grows in northern regions, confirming that Jane is from there. They then hear on the radio about an approaching storm, so Austin suggests to his father that they finish the work in the morning. But the old man firmly insists they must complete it tonight, reminding him that he has to report back to the sheriff by morning. The two then continue dissecting her, and they find another bizarre object within her body, which is a piece of cloth, but shockingly it contains a human tooth. They inspect the cloth, and it turns out to be an old shroud, engraved with Roman numerals and strange symbols. Austin examines the thread they pulled from her mouth earlier, which turns out to be from the same shroud. He then places the tooth back into her mouth, and it fits perfectly. He's met by a grim realization. Someone had pulled out her teeth, wrapped them in the fabric, and forced her to swallow them. The markings on the shroud hint at something dark and ritualistic, so Austin concludes she may have been the victim of a human sacrifice. Soon, they once again hear radio warnings about the dangerous storm, this time warning them they're not getting out of there. Suddenly, the old song "Open Up Your Heart and Let Sunshine In" begins playing again, so a worried Austin suggests they leave, but his father ignores him. Tommy then removes Jane's skin, and they freeze in shock when they notice it's engraved with the same disturbing symbols they saw on the shroud. Austin quickly turns on the flashlight, and both of them are horrified when they notice the drawers where all the dead bodies were kept are now empty. It's at this point that Tommy finally decides to listen to his son, and they decide to get the hell out of here. But unfortunately, they discover that the exit door is blocked by a massive fallen tree, leaving them trapped. Austin tries to call for help, but realizes his signal is completely gone. They rush to the office, which has a landline, and quickly lock themselves in here. Tommy dials the police station to speak with the sheriff, but the latter can't understand a word he's saying, and the call abruptly cuts off. The situation becomes worse when they hear a bell ringing in the distance, signaling something horrifying is happening. And then, when Austin peeks through the gap in the door, the entity, who appears to be a corpse, now begins aggressively banging to open the door, but the duo manages to barricade it just in time. After the banging finally stops, Austin thinks Jane is behind all of this, since it all started when they began examining her. But Tommy, being a man of science, doesn't believe such a theory and insists the woman is just a corpse. Next, Tommy goes to the bathroom to tend to the injury on his wrist, which is bleeding heavily. But he hears movement behind the shower curtain, and Austin also notices a shadow there, but Tommy finds nothing on the other side. But then, an invisible force yanks him and slams the door shut. Tommy is now being slammed by the unseen force, and he sees a vision of a charred body with gray eyes. Soon, Austin finally manages to break inside. He then helps Tommy to get up, and the old man tells him what he witnessed earlier. He now believes that it is all Jane's doing, and wonders what they must do next. The two soon return to the autopsy room, and are horrified when they notice that the organs they removed from Jane have already decomposed, as if her body had been preserving them. They decide to take her to the crematorium to destroy her, but then, the door suddenly slams shut and locks by itself. Alarmed, Austin desperately tries to break open the door and manages to make a hole, but soon he notices a corpse on the other side. Having had enough, Austin pours fuel all over Jane's body, and Tommy sets it on fire. Strangely, the flames do not affect her body, and the fire spreads throughout the room, destroying their camera, the photos, and all of their research so far. Tommy grabs a fire extinguisher to put out the flames, and they both stare in shock to see Jane's body still completely intact. Realizing they can't destroy her, they decide to take the elevator to exit the place. But just as they're about to reach there, the elevator door suddenly closes by itself. Things get even worse when they realize one of the corpses approaching them. Luckily, the elevator door finally opens, and they get inside, only for the door to be half closed. As the corpse eventually reaches the door, Tommy brutally strikes it in the head with the axe. But moments later they hear a woman whimpering, and Austin is horrified to see a dying Emma, who has come to pick him up for their date. The poor guy begins crying, and soon the elevator starts functioning, so Tommy leads his distraught son inside. But moments later, the elevator fails once again, and leaves them trapped. Both men seem extremely broken, and they blame themselves for Emma's death. Elsewhere, the incinerator suddenly turns on by itself, while the father and son wonder why Jane hasn't killed them yet. Austin theorizes that maybe she wants them to suffer. She tried to stop them every time they cut her up, as if she didn't want them to find out something. At the same time, we notice the incinerator soaring to dangerous levels, sending smoke throughout the place. Austin suggests to his father that they go back and investigate her cause of death, which may help figure out how to stop her. Upon returning to the hallway, Tommy covers Emma with a blanket, and both advance with difficulty as the smoke fills the entire area. Suddenly, someone invisible attacks Tommy, and Austin can only hear slicing and screaming sounds. But he eventually manages to help his dad, and together they enter the autopsy room to continue with the final stage of the autopsy, which is dissecting her brain. Tommy begins the procedure and soon extracts a piece of tissue from her brain. To their surprise, when they examine it under the microscope, they are horrified to discover that all the brain cells are fully active, which means she is still alive. They thus believe that some sort of otherworldly energy is keeping her in this unnatural state. Austin again begins examining the symbols on the shroud, and soon manages to point out a Bible verse from Leviticus chapter 20, verse 27. He also figures out that the Roman numerals on the shroud say 1693. Meanwhile, Tommy checks the Bible verse, which says, "Any man or woman who consults the spirits of the dead shall be put to death." Soon they realize that the body isn't even from here, but from 17th century northeastern New England. The Salem witch trials took place during this period, when many innocent women and girls were accused of being witches and executed. Tommy insists that witches are a myth, and that all the girls back then were innocent and falsely accused. Most were either hanged or burned at the stake, but Jane seemed to have been brutally tortured and endured a far worse fate. Austin states that maybe they tried to kill her in a normal way, but when they couldn't, they had to resort to such extreme methods. At this moment, Tommy comes up with a chilling theory, and states that maybe the cruel things they did to her accidentally turned an innocent girl into an actual witch. He says that when they cut Jane open, she felt it, and now she wants them to feel the same pain, which is why she's keeping them alive. Tommy displays his injured rib, which is now engraved with the same ritualistic markings, so he speculates that this could be her way of exacting revenge. And then suddenly, here, Tommy has accepted that they can't defeat Jane, so he tells her he won't fight, but begs her not to hurt his son. Soon the door banging finally stops, after which Tommy begins to feel unbearable pain, and soon his wrists and feet start fracturing. At the same time, Jane begins to heal unexpectedly, and her body pulls itself back together. Her eyes slowly return to normal, while Tommy's eyes soon turn gray like hers. The old man can't bear the excruciating pain, so he begs his son to finish him off. A horrified Austin reluctantly obliges and stabs him with a heavy heart. His father instantly passes away, while the poor guy is left crying and broken. Moments later, the lights suddenly come back on, and everything seems to return to normal. The radio turns on, right when Austin hears the sheriff's voice outside and rushes to the door. The sheriff reveals that they're cutting down the tree blocking the entrance, and asks him to open the door from inside. Austin says he can't, and to his horror, the sheriff suddenly begins singing, "Open up your heart and let the sunshine in." This crushes the hope of the poor guy, and he realizes it's not the sheriff, but rather a hallucination brought on by Jane. And then all of a sudden, the next day, officers arrive at the morgue to investigate the scene of the gruesome deaths. The sheriff is confused by what happened here, and discovers there's no sign of forced entry, just like in the previous case. Moreover, a radio announcement declares that it is the 4th day of sunshine, revealing that the storm the father and son experienced was nothing but a hallucination. Even more bizarre is that Jane's body remains completely intact, as if no autopsy was performed on her. An officer offers to transfer her corpse to a nearby morgue, but the sheriff orders it to be sent to another county, leaving someone else to deal with the problem. In the final scene, an officer is seen transporting Jane's body, and when he turns on the radio, the haunting song, "Open Up Your Heart and Let the Sunshine In," begins playing. Meanwhile, Jane's toe twitches in the back of the van, and the eerie toll of a bell fills the air, revealing that real horror has only just begun. And with that, friends, this story comes to an end. Tell us in the comments how you like the explanation. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.